George, good to talk to you. Wanted to ask you about Lucas Agire, true freshman, comes in and he's kind of working in the two deeps a little bit, and that's a big step for a freshman. What have you seen from his development since he arrived in January?
Same thing I saw from in the recruiting process, just who he is as a person, the family he comes from, the program he comes from. He's just a very driven kid. He's fun to watch. There's those innocent days where he makes mistakes and gets down on himself, but that's the fun part of coaching young kids is getting them to believe in themselves. But he certainly has the prerequisite abilities. He's got good feet. He's very driven. He's very motivated. He has defensive background, which I really like. So he plays the game physical and he likes contact, and he's a joy to be around. Like this week, and last week, he'll spend most of the week with the varsity, but once a week we send him to the scout team no matter what to get some action against the varsity D line, and because I just think that's a really integral piece of these guys developing as young guys. When I first got here, we had a couple guys that went straight to varsity, and I look back at their experience, and I wish they had a little bit more scout team experience. And so Lucas is getting the best of both worlds right now, but his attitude's great, smart kid, tough kid. He's just starting out, but he's got some tools.
Mitch Vick.
Morning, George. Wondered if you could tell me about Jennings downplays, it feels sometimes his knowledge of the game and his ability and oh shucks, I just block, they tell me to block, whatever. He strikes me though as a far more cerebral player than he'll let on. Of course, the physical attributes and tools are all there, but just what kind of a heady player is he?
Jennings is a great example of someone who genuinely is himself. He's not trying to be anyone else. So when he answers those questions that way, that's how he thinks. He just keeps it simple with a kid that he's a talented kid, and he does know the game. He studies the game. Like going back to fall camp, Mitch. Like some kids are back taking a nap in the dorms, things like that. And I go in the old line room to clean up the boards or put something on the board for the next meeting. And the lights are on and the film's going, and the film's from like 2002, 2004, just name the year. And he's studying tackles from back when. He's studying Robert. He's studying Bruce and all those guys, and that's just who he is. He's a student of the game, and he's really invested in it. But yeah, he's a little sharper football wise than he may answer. But I don't think he's trying to. I don't think he's trying to be a liar or anything like that. I think he genuinely just tries to keep things simple and in his life in general. And it's really refreshing. It's refreshing to see a kid, and all of our seniors are like that. It's really awesome, where they have some things, that they've achieved, and they have some things ahead of them that are exciting. And he's just being a kid.
Chad Leistiko.
Hey, George, great to see you. Where do you see opportunity in the run game this week against Minnesota?
I think it's similar to every week. Um, you always want to establish the run game, and you're in the Big Ten, and the run defenses we faced the last few weeks have been pretty stout. So you got to be on your P's and Q's as far as fundamentals and playing together and things like that. So, it's going to be a great challenge because they're coached well. I mean, very well, and they have been for years. They've had multiple coordinators, but the core of their defense and how they play and the style which they play and the high effort and tenacity at which they play with is always present, and it's no different this year. So we're gonna have to play our best for sure.
Tyler Tashman.
Hey George, hope you're doing well. Just wondering, as you've kind of built this room back up, um, what has that been like from your perspective to see the growing pains and now to be kind of on the other side of it a little bit to where the room is in a really good place. What has that just been like from your perspective to see that journey the room has gone on the last few years?
Um, yeah, I mean, this could take hours. It's good. It's good to see. The biggest thing that you realize is that the work is never done. But you look back at some of the growing pains we had a few years ago, and it's done. What you learn, what it reemphasizes, is that it's done with people. It's done with people. It's not done with playbooks. It's not done with plays. It's not done with X's and O's. It's not done with fancy stuff. And it's done with getting the right people together and helping empower those people and build layers up in an offensive line room to where one group can learn from the next group that learns from the next group, and they can mature at the proper pace. But for me, it wasn't something new. I don't know, five of the six jobs that I've taken over my career have been similar situations. So not that it's always the same, but you always kind of go through the steps. When you come in and survey the land, when I came in 21 and surveyed the land and what needed to be done, you kind of know the steps before they happen. You don't know exactly how it's going to go, but you learn to appreciate those steps, and it helps you stay focused as a coach, because the last thing those kids need is a coach that's waffling. The last thing those kids need when you're going through that early adversity is a coach without a spine. You got to stay the course, because we're talking about teenagers and trying to get them to believe the right way and work the right way. And it's very similar chapters of the book that I experienced at Mattoon High School, University of Indianapolis, and Miami, Ohio, and Illinois State was very similar. This one was a little bit more uphill than those other ones, but I think you just learn to appreciate it as you get older as a coach. Because if you don't understand it and appreciate it, you're going to cheat those kids that are going through that process. So I think getting the right people together and having an understanding and a trust together, that's how you get the ball rolling a little bit. And then there comes a day where you have to understand that the work is never done. Because the last thing you want to do is go backwards. Not saying you're not going to have a tough play, a tough day. Those happen. This is an imperfect game played by imperfect people, coached by imperfect people. But that's part of it too. Helping young kids learn about adversity and how to respond to adversity is probably the biggest piece of being an O-line coach, in my opinion. And I think our kids have done a tremendous job over the last, 3 years, 4 years of understanding that. But it starts with kids. Take the coach out of the equation, take the plays out of the equation. It starts with kids that are willing to stick together and work through things and be aware and have that self-motivation. So then you start thinking about recruiting, how important recruiting is, how important getting kids that have those fibers in their past and knowing who you're recruiting. So it's good, but the work's never done. That's the fun part of this job, is as soon as you try to pat yourself on the back, your other hand's going to slap you. So and those are lessons that young people need to learn too, that you just keep working. And again, that starts at the top here. That's Coach Ferentz to a T. I work for the best that really understands development and really understands what it takes to get a young kid to an older kid. And sometimes it's time and it's certainly experience.
Scott Docterman.
George, how are you? Good to see you. I wanted to ask you about Trevor Lowi. And going into the season, it was a pretty competitive situation, and you kind of let him compete through the first part of the first month, and then he really took ownership of it. And not that the other hand is going to slap him or anything here, but I think when you look at the dude he went against, had 4.5 sacks in the playoffs last year and Dennis Sutton. And yet he held him to a whopping 1 tackle the other day. And I kind of, in a couple of years, are we going to look at that game as, hey, he might have arrived that day as a bona fide big time tackle. So can you kind of talk about his trajectory as a player, and then what's his future like at that position and then beyond?
Yeah, I think, when we recruited him, he was one of those kids that could play tackle. And if that didn't work out, you could always move him inside a guard. Big physical kid. I knew his high school. I coached his high school coach in college at the time, and so I knew a lot about Trev when he was young. So I knew that fiber I was talking about earlier, what makes him up and his family, and so he's always been a competitive kid. He's always been a winner, and I think with him as he came into college, he's always been confident. He can make a mistake and not go in the tank, which I expect young kids to do a little bit. And that's where the coach comes in. You get them out of the tank. With Trev does a really good job of understanding that failure is a part of success. So when he has a bad play, he can self-correct a little quicker than some young kids. And he was like that as a freshman, in our development work. But yeah, he's obviously able to play tackle. He's got good feet. He's got good balance. His body is still maturing. He's nowhere where he's going to be in another year. Talking about the development piece, the work that Coach Braithwaite and his staff do with, especially our position, is so vital and it's so good here. And that's been a big piece of his. Coach Ray's been on top of Trev since the day he walked in. Knew his weaknesses, knew what to work on, and we have conversations about it. So what you see that long body continue to get a little bit stronger and bend a little bit better and play. But I think the mental side of it for him is what carries him right now. Now the physical part is really going to catch up one day, and now it's what you're talking about. That trajectory, but his attitude's good. His first year starting, and he's had some plays he's wanted back, and he's been coached hard and things like that, and he doesn't flinch. He's just. There's some things you got to teach young kids on how to respond. There's some kids that have it naturally, and that's a tribute to his family and his high school program. But that's, again, when you go back to the recruiting piece of it, how many of those boxes can you get checked? Because that speeds up the process when they get here. But he's been a delight to coach, and he's not a kid that's, he doesn't take a lot of deep breaths and say, okay, I'm doing good for a redshirt sophomore. He's a kid that wants to do better. And I think a big piece of that is just those seniors. It's hard to be happy about your play in our room when Lojo and Dunk and Bo Stevens are up there dog cussing themselves, and I just think that piece of our room right now is vital for these young kids like Lauk and Layton and Cannon and Peep and that whole redshirt sophomore class. But yeah, I've been pleased with him, and I think he'll continue to get better, and there'll be bumps in the road as he goes, but couldn't ask anything more from him.